Chapter 4, Project VR. Antonio Khan stands peering out of the window office, overlooking the shimmering lights of nighttime Chicago. In his expensive, tailored suit, and with his neatly trimmed black hair and goatee, the CEO and founder of Conco Pharmaceuticals appears every bit a cliché rich business playboy. Underneath that exterior, a different animal lurks, an animal that is constantly observing his prey before moving in for the kill. He is an apex predator, and his instincts are second to no jungle-dwelling beast. "What is it?" Khan asks, without turning around. A slender, almost elastic figure, pale as a corpse, slithers his way into the room. "I thought you might be interested in some local news from one of your factory towns," the representative says, each word escaping his lips with a hiss. "Why should any local matters of the fief concern me?" "The son of one of your former employees at the Rockland, Indiana facility has recently gone on a murderous rampage. He all but wiped out the entire local police force single-handedly." "A child did this?" Khan asks, his interest now piqued. "A teenager, actually. Witnesses described him to possess inhuman qualities, such as red eyes, super strength, and even resistance to gunfire. Those hillbilly peasants must be out of their minds." "I do not think so. There's something more to it than that. I was able to get the official police reports, and one of the survivors said that the boy referred to himself as a creature called Yamura." He pauses for a moment. "It was not just the police that he engaged in battle. Captain Koldelof sent several of his operatives, led by Permafrost and Boulder, to assist Director Boyd in handling the problem in his backyard. This Yamura obliterated the team. Only Permafrost was able to survive, and she is in bad shape. We've been unable to get much information out of her." Khan pauses, the name reverberating through his skull. Only a day earlier, he had first heard the name spoken by a female visitor. The woman was elegant and fierce, hailing from some European country he could not place immediately. He wanted her the moment he laid his eyes on her, as she exuded power. It was only later that he learned the power he sensed was borrowed. A woman of far greater power pulled the strings of this messenger, sending her to speak with him on her behalf. The woman's smooth caramel skin, the way she carried herself with nobility, was as if royalty had entered his office. Her words, however, were much less appealing. "You are the link between where what my mistress seeks flees, and where it hopes to reach," Emile Roche, messenger of Inyana, says. "My mistress has used her vast powers to see what has been done, and we know that the boy will eventually seek you out to avenge his father. When he comes, you will fear the name Yamura." He laughed off her warnings, dismissing her as nothing more than one of the more attractive gypsy temptresses of the old world. She was escorted out of the building, but not without a final warning. "If you do not contact my mistress the moment Yamura reaches your precious tower, you will die." Khan moves to his desk and pours himself a glass of expensive brandy. The room temperature liquid burns as it goes down, making him wince. "Find that woman, that prophet, which came to us yesterday. I wish to hear all that she has to say about this Yamura character." The representative nods, melting back into the shadows. "If everyone that I have orphaned in my business were to come seeking revenge, I would need a much stronger security force." Khan smiles, taking another drink nervously. "This Yamura will be handled. I have the utmost confidence in my soldiers. No one can defeat Shesha in combat. If everyone else fails, Shesha will halt this boy's vengeance dead in its tracks." Jake gets off the bus to use the restroom while it refuels off Interstate 75, somewhere in northern Georgia, between the border with Tennessee and Macon. After relieving himself and washing his hands, Jake pauses as he looks up at the mirror. The teen's look is disheveled, and it is obvious he has not been sleeping. Deep rings line the underneath of his eyes, and his face appears gaunt and sickly. If you weren't alive, how many lives would be spared if Yamura were ever to gain control? Jake asks himself. If I had died before all of this bullshit started, would all of the people at the police station or in the alleys or at the dojo still be alive? You cannot ask yourself such hypothetical questions, Yamura says from behind, his image appearing to Jake through the mirror. One can control the past as well as one can control the rising and setting of the sun. Jake pictures the lifeless bodies of the many killed by Yamura while possessing his body. The blank stares of the dead, and the pools of deep crimson blood swelling out around them, causes the teenager to tremble, brought near tears. His selfishness and jealousy led to each and every one of their demises, whether directly or indirectly. It becomes strikingly apparent that the world would be a much safer place if he were no longer a part of it. Pulling Yamura down into the abyss with him in death would be the closest act to redemption that he could ever hope to achieve. Reading the thoughts of self-destruction, Yamura is troubled. Having never possessed a human body before, he is unsure what the consequences would be if his vessel were to expire. Would he too pass on to the afterlife? Or would he linger in sole ownership of Jake's body as it remains lifeless and rotting? Unwilling to chance either possibility, he pleads with his vessel to turn back from this seemingly suicidal state of mind. Jake considers his options carefully, knowing that a single mistake could render him unconscious instead of dead, and that would put Yamura in complete control of his body once more. Aside from the technical aspects, the teen is filled with fear and apprehension. Should he follow through with his idea and succeed, not only will he be eliminating the threat of Yamura, he too will be gone from the world forever. He will never again see his mother, his grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, or friends. He will slip into oblivion if he is lucky, pass through the gates to hell if he is not. You cannot truly consider this thing, Yamura shouts, his own fear apparent in his inflected voice. What good can you do for the world if you are no longer in it? Life is the only precious commodity in the universe. You cannot throw that away for a minuscule chance at preventing future misfortunes at my hands. Jake's eyes narrow upon the spirit of Yamura, his resolve strengthening from the Sakari's desperate fear. If I can save a single life by ridding this world of you, then I gladly give up my own. Ignorant child, Yamura spits angrily. You have not lived enough of life to judge what is or is not worth tossing aside. You have never experienced the true bliss of coupling, nor the joys of rearing offspring and watching them develop. Your life has not even truly begun. How dare you speak to me about the quality of life? You've killed how many people? Hundreds? Thousands? The importance of human life isn't a concept. It's a fundamental truth you would never be able to understand. Shaking, Jake punches his fist into the mirror. Shards of broken glass rain down on the sink and floor, breaking apart into smaller pieces. Selecting a longer shard with an extremely sharp end, Jake grips it tightly in his hand. His entire mind and body are at war with each other, fighting over what may be the final decision he will ever make. Blood drips steadily to the floor from Jake's hand as he continues to grip the glass, and its sides cut into him. Do not! Yamura screams as Jake presses the tip of the glass into his forearm, just below his elbow, and rakes it down in a single forceful motion, all the way to the bones of his wrist. Blood sprays into the air and covers the sink, walls, and floor. And Jake himself. The teen stumbles, falling back against the electric air dryer and knocking the device off the wall as he drops to the floor. Jake's mind becomes cloudy and hard to focus on any thoughts for more than a second. No series of past memories flash before his eyes. The teen only feels a sensation of heat and an overwhelming drowsiness, far beyond anything he has ever before felt. Cursing, Yamura uses all of his energy to close the wound and save the life of his host. After a few seconds, the bright red blood leaking from the boy's arm begins to thicken into a black, tar-like substance that finally becomes too viscous to escape the wound. Too drained to take over the body himself, Yamura also succumbs to sleep. Together they slumber for hours, allowing the teen's body to recover, both physically and mentally, from the ordeal. Clavemont High School, Clavemont, Georgia. Junior level biology. Teacher, Randall Etheridge. A relatively small town, nestled within the southern Georgia swamps. Clavemont is only half an hour from the border with Florida. Immediately upon entering, one feels the chill of the science classroom. Unlike the other classes, this room has no desks. Instead, large stone tables mark the walls, with 6 bar stool seats each. At each table center is a hand-washing sink, and beside it a gas valve and nozzle stand for crucible work used by his senior chemistry class. The room is decorated with cabinets, filled with hard-to-pronounce jars of chemistry supplies, ancient-looking formaldehyde containers of dead animals, and cardboard boxes with faded labels ranging from soil samples to rattlesnake vertebra. Gruff, and with an imposing stature, the teacher stands at the head of the classroom, demanding full attention. His shaved head shines under the artificial lighting, and his perfectly shaped mustache slopes down the sides of his oversized jaw. Built more like a professional wrestler than a school teacher, Randall Etheridge has never been one to lack respect from students and peers alike. Rarely does a rambunctious youth cause a disruption in his class. Coach E's temper is widely rumored to shake the walls of the English department, 2 halls away. Despite never coaching at Clavemont, Etheridge has called Coach E out of reverence for an almost legendary stint at a Wisconsin school years ago. Taking over a program that had not won a game in multiple seasons, Coach E led them to a state finals appearance before being unable to show up at the championship game due to his wife's terminal illness. Without their chieftain, the team reverted to their past legacy and were defeated in a brutal 30-0 shutout. Coach E's wife passed away shortly thereafter, and he left Wisconsin never to coach football again. Energy is stored in the human body within specially developed cells called mitochondria. Mitochondria are well suited for producing energy. That a single mitochondrion could power an entire city block for several minutes if it could somehow be harnessed into producing a purely electrical output. Mitochondria function independently of other cells, and it's theorized that they were once a virus that evolved after millennia of coexisting in a symbiotic relationship with humans, that they eventually became assimilated into the body, the large teacher explains to his junior-level science class. A few students giggle at his slight lisp, but he silenced them with merely a look. One boy, sitting in the front row, hangs on his every word. Science fascinates Brian Rood. He is captivated by it. "Is there a problem?" Etheridge asks, as Brian suddenly shouts out in pain. "No, sir," Brian whispers, rubbing the back of his neck. He slides further down into his seat to diminish the surface area for targeting by his assailants behind. At the back of the class, Butch Harper reloads another paperclip into the rubber band wrapped around his thumb and index finger into a makeshift slingshot. Dressed in his red and gold Letterman jacket, Butch is the only senior in the class, and his immaturity gives great hints as to why he is behind in his academic track. Beside the jock sits a hulking specimen of a teenager named Tiny Sterling. To Tiny's left is a girl with dark hair and ripped jeans named Stacy Byrne. Together, the 3 of them are known as the Trio. The Trio is infamous around the school as bullies, and a general disruption within any learning atmosphere. Above all others, Brian Rood is their favorite to torment. "Want to stop bogarting that, asshole?" Stacy asks, punching Butch in the shoulder. Butch hands Stacy the slingshot, and the girl immediately fires the loaded paperclip into the back of Brian's head. The force of the tiny metallic projectile breaks the teen's skin, causing him to both shout out in pain again and to begin to lightly bleed. His lecture again disrupted, Etheridge loses his patience. I will tolerate no more outbursts in my classroom. Brian, off to Mr. Priest's office now. They hit me with a paperclip, Brian protests, pointing to the back of the classroom where the trio sits grinning devilishly. Etheridge pounds his fist on the edge of his desk, causing the entire room to seemingly shake. Now! Brian nervously sits in the office of Mr. Tyler Priest, Clavemont's principal. Mr. Priest stares out the window of his office, looking out at the campus courtyard, and sighs loudly with distress. I don't understand any of this acting out, Brian. You're the school's top student. Honestly, sir, I didn't do anything, Brian says, still rubbing his neck, where he was stung by the paperclip. I come to school every day and try my hardest to learn all that I can and better myself, but people like Butch and Stacy make it nearly impossible for me. Mr. Priest sighs loudly, turning to look again out his window that's facing a courtyard. Several students are walking from the library back to class, each carrying an armful of books. At the center of the courtyard is a pagoda, framed by multiple palm trees. Students enjoy being able to sit under the shade and read during breaks and in between classes. I know, he finally says. There are a handful of students in every grade that truly test the patience of a principal. I've already suspended Butch before for his behavior. One more disciplinary mark, and he'll become ineligible to participate in any extracurricular activities. So that's why Coach E is so hesitant to blame him for anything? He doesn't want to be the man responsible for getting Butch Harper kicked off the football team? Brian is disgusted by the politics that go on behind the scenes, because football generates revenue for the community, far more than any other sport or activity the school participates in. The community at large does its best to shield the team from all criticism or controversy. It's much more complicated than that. The boosters put a lot of pressure on the administration, and when a prominent player is disciplined too much, advertising sponsors in the town begin to drop off. It's a very delicate issue to manage, and not one that we can ever make anyone happy with. No, Brian growls. It isn't really complicated. The Coffers don't want to lose a star athlete, so he gets a pass to do whatever he likes, and staff won't do a damn thing to stop him. Mr. Etheridge has been an educator for 14 years, has been nominated for Teacher of the Year honors 7 times. He would never turn a blind eye to misbehavior just because a student is an athlete. Well, that is exactly what's happening. Coach E knew that I was being hit by stuff, and he targeted only me to be removed from class. How about this? Why don't you transfer over to Mrs. Klein's class? That would solve your problem with Butch, wouldn't it? For about 1 hour of a 24-hour day, he'll still be free to harass me for 23 more. He assaults me in the hallways, in the lunchroom, and on my way home from school. Why should I have to change classes for his aggressive mental disorders? Make Butch leave. He's the real problem. Mr. Priest stutters his response, indicating he isn't very confident in himself. Well, Butch is needed to be under the supervision of certain staff members. He cannot switch his classes now. You mean to say that he has to be in Coach E's class because Coach E is sympathetic to the athletes and will let him do whatever he wants? Brian, please stop making this more difficult than it already has to be. Mrs. Klein is a terrible alternative. I may not agree with Coach E's attitude or treatment of me, but he's the far better professor. I don't even think Mrs. Klein has a better grasp of science than many of her students. Mr. Priest doesn't want to respond, knowing that Brian's arguments are not without merit. Sandra Klein's specialization was actually world history when in college. But when hiring on there were no openings in the history department. She opted to take the open position in science, rather than wait for an opening in history. I don't foresee Butch Harper going anywhere in the immediate future. If you don't think you can learn from Mrs. Klein, then please learn how to ignore the problematic students and focus on your own studies. That's just terrific, Brian says, raising his voice. I get assaulted and harassed, and you threaten me with punishment. This school is a fucking joke. He storms out of the principal's office, heading to lunch without waiting for Mr. Priest to okay his leaving. After leaving the principal's office, Brian heads to the cafeteria. This is a time of day that he dreads. Upon entering the open room, Butch immediately appears from behind a trash can and hurls an apple into Brian's face like a baseball. The teen reels back, blood trailing from a busted open nose. Brian tumbles backwards and falls to the floor hard. The other students roar with laughter at his misfortune, and Brian wishes he could just find a spot to crawl away into and die. At least, then he wouldn't have to deal with the humiliation and pain that is Clavemont High School ever again. A heavy-set girl with wavy auburn hair and freckles kneels beside Brian and uses a handful of napkins to control the bleeding of her friend's nose. "Leave him alone, jerk. What do you get out of picking on someone weaker than yourself?" "Shut up, piggy. You can't talk to me in the same tone as your little Debbies." "Grow up, Cro-Magnon." Butch walks away, laughing, and receives several high fives as he passes the table of others wearing similar jackets as him. "You okay?" Lucy Davis asks. She is Brian's only friend in the entire world. Without her, he would truly have no reason to go on. "Yeah," Brian whispers, sitting up. "Thanks for standing up for me again." "We've stuck together since 3rd grade. I can't abandon you now," Lucy replies with a smile. Brian shuffles slowly down the cafeteria assembly line, still feeling the throbbing pain of his nose. The lunch lady drops a scoop of mashed potatoes on his tray with a curved ice cream spoon, and scratches her whiskered chin with a free hand. "Next!" the woman shouts with a deep voice. Her teeth are brown, and several are missing. Long catfish-like hairs protrude from her cheeks. Brian slides down further, taking a fruit cup and an aluminum foil-wrapped soy burger. He walks over to the vending machines, sticking $1 into the slot after trying to unfold the corners of the bill as best as he can. The machine rejects his money several times, forcing him to angrily straighten the dollar along the side of the rail in an attempt to smooth it out flat. As soon as the soda drops to the bottom tray with a loud clunk, Butch sweeps past and draws the can up into his possession without breaking stride. "Thanks for the refreshment, faggot," Butch laughs, returning to his table to more high fives from his friends. Brian groans, removing another $1 from his pocket. "I hate this school so fucking much," Brian says, sitting down beside Lucy, who has already eaten half of her burger and all of her french fries, rather than choosing the fruit cup. Lucy looks over at him, partially consumed imitation meat still hanging from her jaws. "It isn't so bad," she says. At least that is what he thinks she says. It's hard to determine due to the unchewed food still in her mouth. She may befriend him when no one else will, but even he is still disgusted by her eating habits. "You don't get robbed, harassed, punched, kicked, swirled, or have your sexuality publicly questioned every day like I do," Brian barks back at her. "No, because girls can't be mean at all," Lucy replies, rolling her eyes. "You don't think I'm not reminded every day how fat, ugly, and unloved I am by girls like Stacy? I'm sure I've been called Pizza the Slut more times than you've been called gay." Brian interrupts her quickly. "Being called gay isn't the issue. Being kicked until you're bleeding and then called a faggot is different. Being judged is way different from being physically abused. Being put down constantly is abuse." Brian waves a hand to end the issue and opens his soy burger. "It's not the same." "Well, you could always throw him off and pretend that you like it." Brian just stares at Lucy for several long seconds before replying. "You're joking, right?" He rubs his temples to massage a budding headache. "If I play the fool with Butch, I won't just be getting my ass kicked. I'll be getting myself killed." "Don't be such a drama queen. He isn't going to kill you." "Yeah?" Brian growls, standing up to leave as his appetite is lost. "Put that on my tombstone." At that moment, Butch walks up to them and jams a fork into Brian's side. Brian shouts out in pain, causing everyone to look over, but despite seeing the turmoil, they do nothing to help. "I got a better saying for your grave. He died the way he lived, by choking on a dick. Butch laughs, reaching down and taking Brian's other soda, still unopened. Leave him alone, Neanderthal, Lucy shouts, throwing a handful of mashed potatoes into the jock's face. Seething with rage, Butch throws the soda can and hits Lucy in the jaw with it, knocking her off her seat. The girl's head hits the floor hard and she remains motionless. Hey, Kermit, tell Miss Piggy there next time she opens her mouth, it better be to put more food in. If she ever addresses me again, I'll fucking kill her, Butch growls, walking away. Helping Lucy sit up as the school nurse arrives, Lucy looks over to Brian with blurred vision and tears in her eyes. No, you're absolutely right. This school sucks. The lunch hour traffic lurches forward at a sluggish pace. The buildings that normally streak past and their sides resembling a faded and stretched image now appear as motionless giants lining the banks of an automobile river. A red Honda Prelude creeps forward as the other lemmings push their way onward to their personal cliffs. A large, shimmering metallic building becomes visible in the driver's line of sight. Wow, it's bigger than I expected, she thinks in awe. The car pulls into a small entryway as a guard checks her plates and driver's license, before waving her on through the automatic gate. After searching the rows up and down twice, she finally finds the reserved parking place with a sign reading Lynn Jordan. Close to the front, not bad, girl. This is so cool. I can't believe I have my own specific parking place already. Lynn glances at the directions emailed to her by Khan's secretary, and then back at her cellular phone. 10:33. Damn. Can't believe I'm late for my first day. She opens the door, swinging her legs out of the car. Slender and only 20 years old, she's already working on her master's in neurology. Standing up, she brushes the lint off her maroon-colored skirt, just the fabric, after it has crept up to her thigh during the car ride. The cut of the skirt is conservative. Lynn has always had to draw as much attention away from her looks as possible, so as not to distract from her intellectual abilities. Without being given a uniform policy to go by, she decided against going for the full-on professional look, so as to not look too stuffy or full of herself. On the other hand, she could show up looking lazy or too sexy. In the end, a middle ground approach was taken. Mr. Khan seemed pretty laid back and easygoing on all the interviews. Hope being late doesn't bring out another side of him. Lynn takes a few deep breaths and walks to the building's front entrance. The glass doors slide open in front of her, automatically, and close behind her with a metallic click. Ahead of her is a large U-shaped desk, belonging to Rebecca Fairway, receptionist for the Conco offices. A long, smooth leg slinks out from the side of the desk, belonging to the voluptuous blonde. The computer screen shields her face from Lynn, but she knows she must be beyond gorgeous with a leg that would make any supermodel jealous. Lynn suddenly feels self-conscious and catches herself tugging on her skirt to make it even longer to hide her own legs from comparison. Rebecca's constant typing ceases, and she begins to file her nails, ignoring the young woman completely. These ripe out-of-college kids come in here for their first jobs and are too cocky, Khan once told Rebecca. Make them wait. By making them feel as if the world isn't at their beck and call, they tend to become far more cooperative, and thus more able to listen to direction. Lynn leans over the desk, her mousy bangs falling into her small childlike face. Excuse me? Lynn whispers. She's probably some valedictorian bitch, Rebecca sneers. The kind of girl that hated girls like me back in high school. The boys asked us out instead of them. Rebecca continues to ignore the younger woman and pulls out a small compact mirror from her purse. Lynn notices the name on the bag is French and barely pronounceable, so likely expensive. As Lynn stands dumbfounded at her treatment, Rebecca checks her teeth for smeared makeup and adjusts her breasts for maximum cleavage. I really think Antonio must be gay. He's never even glanced at my chest. And I know for a fact these girls are spectacular. My first 6 months here were spent paying them off. Rebecca pulls down her blouse just enough for the lace of her bra to show. Everyone else chucks me out, even that creepy Hindu guy that's always sulking around his office. Oh well, his loss. I know I got it going on. Rebecca glances up. seeing Lynn's eyes pleading for any sign of acknowledgement. Guess I've tortured her enough. Are you gonna, stand there all day? Rebecca's voice cuts out through the nervous silence. She stands up, leading Lynn down a hallway to the left. Mr. Kahn is expecting you. You should really buy a watch with your first paycheck. Lynn cowers, trying to hide her face from embarrassment. On the top of her lack of punctuality, Lynn is also ashamed to be standing next to one who is so intimidatingly stunning. She feels as if she were a teenage boy beside the woman who is a good head taller than her without her heels. Why were you so late? It's not exactly a good impression to make on your first day, Rebecca asks. Lynn wishes she could just start the day over, flushing red. I didn't anticipate so much traffic. My layover was an hour longer than they said it would be. She can't help but wonder if the earlier show was just to put her in her place for being late. The women walk past a hulking mountain of a man, mopping the floor. Easily 300 pounds and 6'5". He seems to be out of place on a football field, let alone as a janitor. As Lynn walks past him, a chill runs down her back. His head is shaved bald except for a long black ponytail at the very top. A tattoo surrounds the one patch of hair, but she can't make it out. Some Japanese kanji, surrounded by flames. That's Han Hayanaro. He's the company's maintenance supervisor. He fixes things that Mr. Kahn says need fixing. I guess he must have plugged a leak somewhere and is just cleaning up his own mess. Normally, Ron the janitor does the mopping for this shift, Rebecca says, noticing Lynn's nervousness walking past the large man. After dozens of turns and nothing short of a mile walk, the girls reach a security checkpoint, guarded by 5 men in black combat fatigues and rifles slung over their shoulders. Security passes? One of the men asks. His hair is short and cropped high and tight. Lynn guesses that he has a previous record of military service. I've got it right here, Rebecca smiles, reaching between her breasts slowly to retrieve her ID card. Fucking tease. Go on. It's the second guard, a dark-skinned and muscular Middle Easterner. What about you, the new girl? Lynn fumbles, dropping several credit cards and a Books A Million membership to the floor before collecting her ID. Take a breath and relax. You're falling apart, kid, Hajir Anajundo says, helping her pick up her belongings. Thanks, Lynn says, barely managing it as a squeak. The other security officer, Dallas Price, rolls his eyes and steps aside for them to pass. Lynn picks up her pace to catch up with Rebecca, who seems to speed down the hallway. What's with all the armed security? We have a lot of dangerous chemicals in this building, in addition to secured laboratories with infectious diseases being researched. If some of the bugs in here were ever to get out, there would be a national emergency. That's where Commander Hajir and his men come in. They're more of a paramilitary group in truth than strictly a security detail. They are highly trained to deal with any situation that may arise if things go awry. Stopping at the end of the hall, a single door lies before them. Here you are. If you need me, just call down. Good luck, Rebecca says, leaving quickly before Lynn can respond. Lynn moves to knock, but the door slides open before she can even touch it. A deep voice echoes from the back of the poorly lit room. It's about time. I was starting to think you were a no-show, Antonio Kahn says, taking a long drag from his cigar. Yes, sir, I'm very sorry about that. Kahn sets down his cigar and leans forward, then makes out the sharp features of his face finally in the light, and shudders. She never saw him in this environment in the 3 interviews she had with the CEO. Enough. Excuses are for the weak. You aren't weak, are you? What kind of question is that? Lynn wonders, tensing up. It's time we leave the childish bullshit behind. We're about to get dirty, so I hope you left your dollies at home. If not, your sweet little ass can get back on that plane and go the fuck home. Is appalled by the chauvinistic attitude of the man. With so much power, she cannot believe a man such as him can believe he can put women down so casually. She balls her fists in anger, prompting Khan to laugh out loudly. That's the attitude. You have a lot to prove. You probably had to deal with a lot of people writing off your talents just because you're so young and female. You have an excellent academic record that reads like a dictionary. The words child genius and protege, I believe, were in your school files. I wouldn't know about that, sir. Neither would I, Khan agrees, sending a verbal dagger through Lynn's pride. All of your achievements and certificates are just words on paper. The only way one can prove their self is through action and results. Yes, sir, I understand, Lynn nods. Project VR is starting up in one of my industrial sites, about an hour outside of the town of Clavemont, Georgia. The small community nature of Clavemont allows us great freedom with which to work undisturbed. Dr. Richard Smith is the lead scientist on the project, and I would like you to jump in with both feet and help him out in any way possible. Are you familiar with his work? I've seen some of his speaking engagements. He's the world's foremost expert on mitochondrial DNA sequencing, and was part of the team that genetically cloned the first viable animal. Friends of ours in the military discovered a previously unknown parasitic organism during one of their missions. Dr. Smith has become convinced that this organism contains the secrets to unlocking the potential of our own human DNA history. I'm aware of the papers. He believes the parasite to be extraterrestrial in origin, however. Do you really think that? Lynn frowns, having expected to come in on a more groundbreaking research project than staring at some ancient worm that may or may not have been from outer space. Dr. Smith is brilliant, but eccentric, Khan laughs. I find the idea of life on other planets absurd. I am interested only in the process of DNA sequencing. If he completes his work, the possibilities would be endless. Scientists would be able to add to or take away from at any point along the chain and transform the human body into basically whatever they could imagine. When would I be leaving to join this team? Get settled into your office and familiarize yourself with the lab. Dr. Smith will show you around and get you up to speed. Khan picks his cigar back up and takes another long drag. Smith will be meeting you on the 3rd floor in the employee lounge. Thank you for the opportunity, sir. One more thing, Khan says, stopping Lynn as she is about to leave the front door. Bring an open mind. Nodding, Lynn exits the office and makes her way back to the security checkpoint, where she hopes Commander Hajir and Dallas can direct her towards the staff lounge. After the young woman leaves, Khan puts out the remainder of his cigar and opens a leather pouch removed from his breast pocket. Inside the pouch are several more expensive imported cigars, and he lights a fresh one, slowly enjoying that first taste. Fine paintings by many world-renowned artists line his walls, lit up by the faint glow of the cigar. A one-of-a-kind Werner Franz Purgatorio reproduction, redrawn by Franz's own apprentice and done specifically for Khan himself, hangs behind the CEO. In the painting, dozens of completely naked souls are in various states of torture as a giant winged creature looms in the background, smiling. Adding her talents to the project will finally allow us to put Project VR into the final stages of development, Khan thinks, having spent most of the past week in meetings with representatives from financial and public relations personnel, as a new factory is having ground broken in Northern California in less than a month. He wishes he could have dedicated more time to the things that interest him most, like Project VR, but the new facility has demanded most of his attention. He straightens a wrinkle from his otherwise immaculate suit and pours himself another glass of brandy. How long have you been standing there? Khan asks, not looking up from his glass. Long enough, says Shesha Kaladi, as the large, dark-skinned Indian steps out from the shadows. She's cute, though I'd rather have gone with that secretary of yours. Don't be such a juvenile, Khan sighs, taking a long drink. Shesha glances at the glass of alcohol and laughs. Do you happen to have any adult male beverages? I don't recall having let you into my office. Breaking and entering is an unsavory habit, Shesha. Shall I call Commander Hajir and have you escorted out? As if that tellhead could. Shesha shrugs. Besides, I had important business to speak with you about. Such as, despite having employed the man for over a decade, Khan still has little patience for the vulgar and ill-tempered mercenary. That geek Smith is becoming rather vocal over his lack of test subjects. He says the well has all dried up. Khan finds slight amusement in Shesha's attempt at humor, but not in the way in which he intended. With your stealth and ability to mask your presence from detection, I believe that you would be able to remedy the doctor's problem. Instinct stirs within the man, and the parasite feeding on his blood forces up memories to the surface. Explosions pepper the sky above as helicopters hover overhead. Screams from the locals are muffled, yet Shesha can still sense the moment. Each one's life flickers and then is extinguished. Keep your eyes on the prize, my friend. We have a mission to accomplish. The voice comes from one of Shesha's subordinates, Hajir Onojondo, a man 3 years his elder. Shesha nods, trying to shake off the regret and pain he feels as the deaths continue to accumulate. The villagers are protecting their Bokswani shaman. Can you sort through this mess and locate him? The sooner he can be eliminated, the sooner we can be out of this shithole, Hajir asked Shesha loudly, trying to be heard over the Hello's engine. Taking in a deep breath and allowing his eyes to go out of focus, Shesha causes the world around him to fade to a dull gray. Faint flames dance all around and periodically vanish. He avoids looking at the other members of his Special Operations Force, as he knows their energies would be almost blindingly strong in this state. In a building to the northeast, Shesha senses one being surrounded by 14 others of above-average strength. We head that way, Shesha says, pointing. Keep your trigger fingers flexed. He's protected by the village's finest warriors. Hajir laughs, unslinging his assault rifle and drawing a long, black-bladed quick-response folding knife from his belt. Locking the blade into place, he grins widely as the sun glistens off his deadly weapon. It's nothing I can't handle. If you're scared, I can go in by myself. Shesha ignores the overconfident taunts of the man and focuses on the task at hand. As the team moves in deeper through the South American village, surrounded by the unrelenting jungle, Shesha increasingly senses a strange, buzzing-like feeling all around him. The open area of huts begins to give way to denser jungles, and the monuments of cultures long past it is swallowed up in its green embrace. A white, metallic powder glistens on the forest floor, catching the team leader's eyes. Fido, collect a soil sample. Shesha orders one of the men, a young American whose loyalty to the team is comparable to a dog, thus earning him the apt handle. What is this stuff? He asks, kneeling beside the soldier. Not quite sure, though it looks manufactured to me. It has an industrial chemical smell to it. The team reaches a large step pyramid, guarded by 4 fierce village warriors. The men shout loudly, but in their native tongue. Shesha is unable to tell what they are saying. He looks to Fido, the brightest member of the team. Not a language I'm familiar with, sir, Fido replies with a shrug. Raising his rifle, Hajir quickly places 2 rounds into each of the men's chests. Some languages are universal. He lowers his rifle, still grinning. Shall we continue? The men shot by Hajir begin to convulse, as massive skeletal appendages extend from their backs, and their bodies become covered by a thick layer of reptilian-like scales. Shesha shudders as their eyes become slits, and the members of his team consume the area around him with gunfire and shouting. From their sides, 10 more of the tribal warriors appear. Shisha is shaken from his memory by Rebecca as she leans her head inside the office doorway. The project supervisors of VR have arrived from the airport and are on their way up to speak with you, sir, she says, with a small hint of alarm in her voice. They don't seem too happy. Thank you, Khan says with a nod, sending her back out. Shesha grumbles from the shadows to himself before addressing the CEO with his concerns. Why are you still wasting your time? Project VR isn't necessary. Designing a device to keep the parasite tech is no challenge for a true warrior. By altering natural selection to allow the weak to flourish, you only set us up for disaster. The success rate of parasitic bonding is abysmal. I cannot profit with only a handful of warriors the process has created. By keeping the parasite in check with electronic pulses and a microchip receiver, the success rate is expected to jump by almost 80%. Increasing one's strength is only good if that person has proper training. Without that discipline, their mind will be destroyed by the parasite and become rejects all the same. That is where you're wrong. The virtual biosuit will change that dynamic. The pulses prevent the parasite from dominating the host and leave it unable to take control of the central nervous system, where most of the damage occurs. The subject then gains the boosted strength, speed, and aggression of the parasite, while avoiding the fever that burns itself through the host and cooks their brain beyond repair. This isn't natural. Giving our gift to the unworthy only sullies its honor. Khan takes another drink and begins to laugh. Jealous that you soon won't be so irreplaceable? You could convert an entire city to the parasite, and none would be able to stand against me. Good, Khan says, setting his glass down. Collect the subjects that Dr. Smith needs. Give him candidates that are in peak physical condition. I'm talking athletes, soldiers, anyone that will push the limits of mediocrity. Nodding, Shesha lowers his head in submission and respect. Yes, sir, as you wish. Inyana has pledged another of her servants to assist us. She claims that she will be able to find her brother Ymura's vessel nearby. Shesha feels a thrill at the thought of finally facing a famed Sakari demon in battle. I have seen that look before. Calm yourself, Shesha. You cannot take this lightly. Ymura's vessel may be the key we need to unlocking the power of the GX parasite. A body strong enough to house a demonic force will provide us ample opportunities at testing our processes. His eyes becoming yellow and slitted black pupils, Shesha begins to reveal long fangs. The day the parasite and I became one was the day that Shesha, Tariq Khaladi, ceased to exist. In his place, a Naga, god of legend, was born, and I became Rapture, forevermore. Khan utters a short laugh and dismisses him. As he leaves, Shesha passes 2 women and 1 man in the hallway. All 3 are wearing lab coats and have the highest levels of security clearance within the facility. The project leader, a dark blonde woman in her mid-30s, with a fierce and dominating personality, is the first to enter, not waiting for Khan's acknowledgement. 400%? Deborah Root barks, slamming a stack of papers onto Khan's desk angrily. Do you really fucking expect an increase of 400% not to overload the system and cause the whole thing to blow? Calm yourself, Deborah. Her husband and fellow supervisor Jonas whispers, trying to avoid a confrontation. Khan stands, always amused by the woman's fiery passion for her work. You have never been one to hold your tongue, my dear. What the hell are you talking about? I'm thinking that we have far too long accepted failure as par for the course. Currently, we have less than 1 full team of GX parasite-enhanced warriors in the special operations after nearly 20 years of experimentation. We must increase the risks, or we may never achieve a desirable result. 400% will not be stable. The entire system will crash and kill the subjects and fry our equipment. Then we will get more test subjects and build more equipment. You aren't developing an objection to the project on moral grounds, are you? Khan inflects his voice to emphasize the word moral. Deborah is momentarily taken aback, but quickly regains her composure. No, sir. Absolutely not. Good. Now go and focus your exceptional minds on the problem of how to make this process work under the guidelines that I have specified. Enjoy the rest of the night, and I will take us all back to Clavemont in the morning on my jet. The Roods and Raquel Melendez, the third supervisor, exit the room defeated. Khan smiles as he pours himself another glass of brandy. Soon, success will fall upon the project. Everything that I have worked so long towards will be achieved. Having had to change his clothes and sneak his way onto another bus in the morning, Jake sits on the final stretch of his journey south, nearing the border to Florida. As the bus slows down before making its turn into the lot of its next stop in Clavemont, Georgia, Jake happens to catch the flare of red and blue flashing lights behind the station. Tensing, he tries not to allow himself to become consumed by fear. Any number of reasons could be possible for the police to be at the bus station. There's no guarantee they are waiting for him specifically. No amount of calm realization can remove Jake's panic and suspicion that the police have anticipated his intended route and intercepted him. One of the gas station clerks, or any of the many passengers that have come and gone from the bus, could have recognized him from the news reports and called in to the authorities. Gathering up his belongings, he prepares for a quick exit. Relinquish control to me. I shall allow no one to stop us, Yamura says. Any shall sorely regret trying to catch this prey. Absolutely not. These men don't deserve to be slaughtered by a monster like you. They're just doing their jobs, Jake protests. He cannot imagine the guilt that would come with causing more lives to be taken because of his fear of being caught by the police and dragged away to prison. If it comes to killing in order to escape, I'll give up and turn myself in. You fool, Yamura shouts. You would not survive incarceration. You are far too soft and weak. Yamura's intense fear of being trapped again in any manner rises to the surface and is reflected in his panicked voice. Spending thousands of years trapped in a magical amulet, the thought of even a single day of confinement is unbearable to the proud Sakari. The bus rolls to a stop with a hydraulic hiss. Idling, the driver awaits the 4 uniformed officers to board. Jake sees that one of the officers is carrying a white sheet of paper that he assumes hides a printed photograph of himself on the opposite side. Weighing his options, Jake finally stands and moves towards the emergency exit, located at the rear of the bus. As soon as the teen stands, he draws the attention of the bus driver, who shouts, "Sit down so we can get this check over with." Jake clutches the red handle of the emergency exit door and pulls at it, while at the same time throwing his shoulder into it with all of his body weight. The door swinging open, Jake hears shouting from behind as the officers rush to cut off his escape. But he is already on the pavement and running before they even reach the back of the vehicle. "There he goes," Jake hears one of the police officers shout. "Don't let him get away." Ducking into the crowded bus station, Jake gains a few valuable seconds of time between him and his pursuers, who have greater difficulty weaving in and around the crowds of bustling travelers. The team manages to momentarily lose his pursuers as he slips out of the doors to board a bus headed north to Charlotte, North Carolina. The last second before boarding, he veers out of the line and sprints into the nearest alley. As the sounds of the bus station grow quieter and distant, Jake doesn't stop running until his calves begin to burn and his chest tightens with fatigue. Having ran in a blind panic, the teen has no idea how far or to where he has run. Well, running was the best choice, Jake whispers to himself. They were definitely there for me. It would have been much easier to kill them, Yamura growls, annoyed by his host's refusal to come around to his ways of thought regarding personal survival. Jake is nearly knocked to the ground as 2 teenagers on bikes speed past him. "Out of the way, weirdo," one of the teens shouts. "You almost made me crash." "You ran into me, ass," Jake replies, giving the guy the middle finger in anger. "Jeez." "Relinquish control to me. and I will make them pay for their impropriety, Ymir growls. Hard pass, Jake whispers. Not worth killing anyone over. Jake continues down the street, ducking into alleys several times when he spots the flashing lights of the police. Ahead in the alley, he sees the 2 bikes of the teenagers lying mangled on the ground. It looks like their recklessness got them what they deserved, Jake laughs. Serves them right. Wait, Ymir cautions. I sense something strange nearby. What is it? The stench of tainted blood, Ymir says with scorn. A human mockery of my race. Another Sakari possessed like me is nearby? Jake shouts in surprise. How can that be? It is no Sakari. Do not compare me to a disgusting tainted blood mongrel. What are they then, if they aren't a person stuck with a Sakari spirit inside of them? How can a human have Sakari blood? Because of our superiority. Many humans over time have sought to imitate our strength by ingesting Sakari blood. There are also rumors that there exist natural mixed breeds, but they are just as shameful. Any Sakari that would mate with a human should be put to death. Damn, tell me how you really feel, Jake groans. I guess there's no Sakari adaptation of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner in the works. I thought there were only 3 of your kind in this world anyway, and they were all imprisoned like you. How could there be anyone with a Sakari ancestry? It is possible. The captives of our army were taken after our defeat, and treacherous murderers like Sinkal and Ninazria also broke rank as soon as the battle in Katal Tukuk began, and I was never able to confirm their deaths. They hear the sounds of a struggle, and one of the teens trying to call out for help. Jake runs towards the sounds only to find 4 men in black tactical gear and full respirator masks over the bodies of the 2 teens from earlier. They're still alive, Ymir says surprisingly. Just unconscious. I can still sense their life forces. Looks like another subject decided to save us the trouble and come to us, the team leader says. This'll be a decent haul after all. We'll show those GX suck-ups that our teams are just as capable of getting the job done. What the hell are you doing to those guys? Jake asks. The same thing we're about to do to you, kid, the team leader says with a laugh. He takes a step towards Jake, but the teen is already thrust forward with his right elbow and forearm into the man's gut. Jake pivots, kicking upwards and connecting with the chin of a second assailant. As the second man falls back, Jake renders the team leader unconscious with a hard right hook and leaps up to grab the sides of the third man's head and drive his knee into his face. Jake's knee shatters the man's tactical visor, and he collapses amidst the broken pieces of his helmet and a spray of blood trailing from a ruined nose. What the fuck? The last assailant shouts in confusion, fumbling to draw his handgun from its hip holster. Jake rushes, taking the man's arm as he reaches for the holster and hyperextending his elbow. As the man staggers back in pain, with only one limp arm, Jake finishes him with a roundhouse kick to the face. Not bad, Ymir compliments, though I would have done it faster. Now end their lives and let us be on the way. And for extra measure, allow me to activate Seal SLR, so that we may absorb their essences for later use. Absolutely not. I'm not killing them, Ymir. You fool! Do you think them to be common street thugs? These men are heavily armed, and equipped with the rare gift of Sakari blood. Do you think just anyone has access to that? What are you saying? Whoever sent these men has great power and influence. Interfering here, you have made an enemy for yourself. If you do not kill these men, they will report your existence to their master, and we will have a much greater problem on our hands. One of the teens begins to awaken, just as the shouting of the police officers are heard nearby. There, Jake says with relief. He'll tell the cops these guys tried to abduct them, and they'll be arrested. Problem solved. Jake runs off just before the police arrive in the alley. Anxious to finally face a Sakari in combat, despite Khan's warnings, Shesha paces back and forth in the security office. Commander Hajir leans against the wall, eyeing him with annoyance. "Would you please sit down? Your constant pacing is driving me insane," Hajir groans. "If you were about to face a demon in battle, you too would be excited." Hajir notices that Shesha's claws are extended, and his eyes have turned yellow, while still remaining in his human form. "You need to calm yourself. We're too close to the civilian public for you to be transforming." Shesha takes several deep breaths, closing his eyes and trying to draw memories to the surface of the past. Memories he finds comforting. Shesha, Hajir, and two others of their team, codenamed Scarab and Demolition, are all that remain standing at the base of the step pyramid. Bodies of 14 mutated beings lie strewn across the grass, along with the other 6 members of the Special Operations Force. "What the fuck were those?" Demolition coughs, blood dripping from his lips. A long gash runs along the left cheek, down to his collar. His skin is peeled back around the wound, exposing his muscle to the jungle's voracious insect population. His black skin covers many of the minor cuts from view, but the bright red of his deeper wounds still shine brightly, as if they were neon signs, advertising all-you-can-eat special for the bugs. "Mutants of some kind," Shesha says, his right eye swollen shut, and his corresponding arm hanging lifelessly at his side, and steadily dripping blood to the trampled grass. "No shit," Demolition says, moving to reload his rifle, but discovering he is out of rounds. Cursing, he throws the weapon at the nearest tree, breaking it into dozens of its component pieces. "I mean, what the fuck are mutants doing out in the jungle? How the fuck did they get there? And how the fuck did they become mutants in the first fucking place?" Shesha slowly begins to climb the steps up the structure, wincing with each movement. The village elder is inside. Those things were meant to be his guardians. Whatever answers we need, we'll get from him. The 4 men move inside the pyramid, leaving behind the twisted body of Fido, with his broken and purple swollen neck, and the other members of their team. Upon entering, their eyes are accosted by the bright metallic glow and strange, vibrating hum resonating around them. "This feels more like a boiler room than a pyramid," Scarab says, gripping his rifle tightly. On the walls are elaborate murals depicting a human-like being with scales, feathers around his face, and a thick saurian tail. He is dressed in golden robes, and towers over the humans drawn around him in worship. "Check this shit out," Demolition says, pointing to another mural further along. In this drawing, the reptilian humanoid stands over several villagers, dripping blood from his wrists into their awaiting mouths. In the next mural, the men have begun their own mutations, into beings similar to their god, but not quite as complete. "His blood causes the mutation," Hajir whispers. "These drawings are hundreds, maybe thousands of years old. This has got to be nonsense," Scarab argues. The voice of the village elder enters each of their minds, speaking in perfect English. "The god Kerala came to our people from the sky in the beginning. It is from he that we were able to learn how to build our villages and this temple. The chosen among us were given his blood so that they would become great soldiers in his service." The village elder approaches them from the shadows, and they realize that his lips are not moving as he speaks. The man is archaic in appearance, yet his eyes are vibrant, and his movements deliberate. "Even in eternal sleep, he blesses the strong among us with even great in power. The 4 of you overcame his strongest remaining guardians. Your strength is truly worthy of his power." The elder leads the men deeper into the structure, where they discover a massive sarcophagus in the center of a white metallic-lined room. The metals in this temple were constructed from Kerala's chariot. Inside, his body has remained in slumber, and strengthens us all. Sliding open the sarcophagus, the elder reveals a dust and spiderweb-covered corpse. The body is giant in size, easily 10 feet in length. The skin tone is dull and grayed, but the hue suggests that at one time in the past, he was once vibrant and blue in coloration. Whether feathers had decorated his body, have long since decayed and vanished. Shisha guesses that something in the strange metallic tomb must act as a preservation agent, keeping the body from complete ruin. You have proven your strength. Kerala blesses only the strong. Please accept his gift. The elder lifts Kerala's right arm, squeezing his wrist and reopening an old wound. Disbelief overtakes the men as fresh blood begins to ooze out from the injury and is used to fill a golden goblet. Hajir raises his rifle, firing 2 shots into the village elder's chest, propelling him across the chamber into the wall. The body slumps to the floor, leaving a red smear down the murals. Call in the helo. We're taking this back to Mr. Khan. This is what he's been searching for, Hajir says, taking charge of the situation. There's no way he knew this shit existed, Demolition argues. Why would he send us to this particular village to extract their elder? He may have not known exactly what he was searching for, but he had an idea for sure. Shisha approaches the sarcophagus, drawn to the blood as if ensorcelled. What are you doing? Hajir asks. We have no idea the effects that will have on us, he continues, as his team leader picks up the golden goblet. The warning is ignored as Shisha drinks deeply of Kerala's blood, ingesting the GX parasite cultivated in the being's cells. Now call that extraction, Shisha coughs, wiping blood off his lips. Back in the security office, Shisha opens his eyes, which are now in complete human form. You good? Hajir asks, keeping his dominant hand on the handle of his concealed sidearm, just in case Shisha fully transforms against orders. Shisha nods, now grinning. I cannot wait to get my hands on this Yamura. Jake walks down the street, completely unsure of his next move. Unable to return to the bus station, he cannot continue on to his grandparents. For now, he's stuck in this town. What do you think those men were trying to do with those teenagers? Jake asks. Nothing good. The first one referred to us as a subject. This implies that they are conducting some kind of human experimentation. I would assume the experiments involved Sakari blood, based on the tainted bloods that were carrying out the kidnapping. Jake stops at a newsstand, checking out the local newspaper, the Clavemont Voice. He skims over the various cover stories, coming upon one about a rash of disappearances occurring over the past year. Most of those missing have been local teenagers. Whatever we stumbled upon is already a bigger problem than we guessed. Lots of teens are being abducted and experimented on, and I have a bad feeling about this. We were having a similar problem back in Rockland. Lots of people were going missing, and no one could figure out why. This is none of our concern, Yamura says dismissively. Our survival is all that matters, not some missing human cubs. Wrong. If I'm going to stay cursed bonded to you, I'm going to do everything I can to atone for the evil that this body we share has done. This is actually kind of cool. Like being in some Hardy Boys mystery, or something out of Nancy Drew. Always wanted to solve a crime like some kind of old school detective. Yamura groans with disapproval. What are you planning, reckless child? Jake smiles. You know what? I think I'm ready to go back to school. Conco Incorporated, Clavemont, Georgia, August 8th, 1998. Cigar lit and leaning back in his chair, Antonio Khan takes a moment to enjoy the perks of being on top of the corporate ladder. Profits are through the roof, with the company's stocks having doubled and 4 new facilities having ground broken in California, Greece, Turkey, and Pakistan. Having spent the previous day inspecting the Clavemont facility, he has decided to kick back and enjoy himself and avoid the demanding project supervisors for a little while. A shadow moves to the room, catching the CEO's eye. Have you considered knocking before? It happens to be the more civilized thing to do. Apologies, Shisha grins, not really caring about Khan's privacy at all. I just came here to tell you that the woman you requested to see has arrived. After her prophetic warnings of Yamura came to pass, and the Security General was unleashed, Khan immediately sought counsel with the emissary of the woman called Inyana. Have our people turned up anything on this Inyana woman? Khan asks, hoping for an advantage before speaking to the emissary again. Inyana has already proven herself powerful by not only predicting future events, but also by projecting part of her strength onto another, which he could sense dripping off the emissary called Emil. With Yamura's possession of a former employee's son, Khan is forced to seek caution against a possible retaliation by the teen, and desires all he can know about the Sakari race. She too is one of these Sakari creatures. They hail from another realm called Averno, though no pathway between our worlds is said to have been opened in 10,000 years. Monsters snitching on other monsters? Khan asks with intrigue. He guesses he shouldn't be too surprised, as humans turn on each other constantly. She is a quasi-deified being in many circles. Entire sects have risen in devotion to her all around the world. Her deeds have moved into legend, so it has been difficult to sift truth from superstition. Her current human followers are devoted and equally secretive. More than a few died before our operatives got anything useful out of them. Khan is pleased by Shesh's motivation. Without being asked, he always knows to what lengths he must go to accomplish whatever is needed of him. Angering this Inyana could prove to be a misstep, but a lack of information would guarantee failure. Continue to dig up whatever you can on both Inyana and Yamura. I will work on the emissary myself. Khan laces his fingers together and smiles. I believe I can coax her to be very forthcoming. Shesha snickers, walking back towards the door. I'll bet you can get her to be forthcoming. Tall and slender woman, with shining golden blonde hair and tanned skin, strides down the hallway past Shesha, who nearly breaks his neck, craning to get a closer look. With legs seeming to go all the way up past her chest, and a tight miniskirt that leaves little to the imagination, Khan immediately remembers her from the other day. She is a vision that is difficult to forget. Emil cares little for professional appearances, or what others may think of her. Of all Inyana's acolytes, she was chosen as the most seductive and beautiful to speak on behalf of the Queen to the power elite males of the human business world. So far, flashing enough skin and a few carefully placed touches, and the most powerful men in the world have all but ejaculated on themselves from being near her. With Emil's assistance, Inyana has added hundreds of supporters and financial backers, freeing her up to pursue her true interests. Searching for the containers of Yamura and Hui, Inyana has shared a fraction of her power with the young woman in return for her efforts. While filled with her master's strength, Emil feels as if every part of her body is electrified with an intensity far beyond any orgasm she's ever experienced. To sample just a taste of this power, she would gladly kill any man, woman, or child if need be. Mr. Khan, Emil purrs in her most seductive voice. Without looking up, he can smell her sweet beauty and cannot help but grin. It is such a pleasure to see you again, my dear, he says, hanging on the word pleasure for an extra pause. My mistress sensed the urgency with which you requested meeting, and I was still in the States. I had actually hoped to speak with the Lady Inyana herself. This prompts Emil to laugh, before she catches herself and regains composure. The Queen is far too busy to travel all the way here just to speak with a man, having very loose connections to her query. Jake Stewart, Khan says, the son of one of my former employees. An employee you had eliminated, so I heard. Khan shrugs. I do not keep track of the fates of all of my employees. Far too many, you see. I have over a dozen factories, and just as many offices, scattered across the fruited plain. You fear Jake Stewart will seek you out for retribution, so you must have done something awful to warrant such a reaction. The murdering of one's father fits, I believe. I am merely a cautious man. Emil parts her lips with a wide smile, revealing sparkling white teeth. Khan cannot find an imperfection on the woman, and begins to feel a fire inside him stirring. He wants her. and of this he knows she is aware. Khan is no fool. He is sure that she was selected for her talents of seduction. Are your defenses so inadequate that you would need my mistress's help should Jake Stewart come seeking you out? I had hoped that would be among the things you could tell me. I have never met a Sakari before. I do not really know how one compares to even an elite human fighter. I will do my best to educate you. Khan stands up and opens his top desk drawer, withdrawing a bottle of brandy and 2 glasses. Let us drink to new friendships. Emil continues smiling, licking her lips in anticipation. She takes the glass. We can find him easily, now that he is in human flesh, Emil says. His Sakari aura pulsates like a beacon to all those who knew how to look. And for the rest of us, how do we locate and remove his threat? Scrying magics will point you to his location, but I warn you that any you send to attack him will be destroyed. Yamura possesses but a fraction of what my mistress wields, yet he will still be far stronger than any team of mortal men that you could assemble. Khan laughs, signaling for Shesha, who is waiting just outside the room, to return. My teams are much more than mortal men, he says, patting Shesha on the shoulder and giving him the okay to partially transform to make his point. Shesha's eyes turn yellow, and the pupils stretch into thin slits. Normal teeth elongate into fangs, and nails become long and hooked claws. Even possessed by a demon, no teenager stands a chance against me, Rapture says arrogantly. I advise you to bring quite a lot of backup. You're going to be surprised how strong Yamura really is. Khan doesn't buy into the propaganda of how superior the Sakari are to humans. With enough skill and training, someone like Shesha or Hajir could defeat a Sakari, even without their parasites boosting them. With the GX parasites activated, even a Sakari elite would fall at their feet. Khan has seen his Special Operations Force battle through the most hostile environments and toughest foes, only to consistently emerge victorious. One possessed high schooler will not be the challenge that they fail to overcome. Why don't you stay here with us and teach my teams how to use magic? Khan asks, trying to flatter the young woman while also gaining valuable experience for his soldiers. That would be ineffective and ill-advised. Queen would not like me gone the amount of time it would take to teach even the fundamental basics of magic, let alone advanced combat techniques. She has granted me stay only long enough to see the death of her brother firsthand. I will require viewing his body as proof of death before I return to her. Smiling, Khan knows that he will never hand over a rare jewel of research, such as the Sakari corpse. The amount of information that could be gleaned from Yamura's body could lead to a whole new field of genetic modification and enhanced warrior research. Beginning to look uncomfortable standing any longer, Khan offers Emil his guest suite on the utmost floor of his building, reserved for business associates, directors, foreign officials. The guest suite is lavish and has more amenities than most hotels. Your offer is most gracious, Emil says, allowing Khan to lead her by the hand from his office to the suite elevator. If you need anything, I shall stop by personally after the details with my team are handled. Plan carefully, she says. I cannot stress enough how dangerous Yamura is. Khan nods. I shall send up a liaison to go over the capture plans with you. I expect your input and revisions before boots hit the ground. Emil enters the guest suite and immediately locks the door and enters the luxurious bathroom. Full-size mirrors line the room, and the sinks are constructed from pure crystal and lined in gold. She shakes her head at the man's materialism, despite Inyana herself being prone to extravagance when it comes to such things. Reapplying her lipstick and fixing out-of-place hairs, she straightens her skirt and takes a deep breath before withdrawing a small spell orb from her handbag and smashing it on the counter. Smoke rises up from the orb and takes the shape of Leor Nadav's face, coated in multiple layers of makeup to hide her decay. Emil is forced to push back her own disgust at the appearance of her glorious master's withered host. "My queen," Emil says, lowering her eyes and bowing with respect. "Your meeting with Khan was successful?" Emil nods. "He is infatuated with me, as they all are. Nothing unexpected." "Does he possess more useful information on Yamura, or his vessel, than earlier indicated?" "I believe he is truthful in his ignorance on the matter. But I do think, however, that he has ties to very dark forces. Jake Stewart's father, a mere workplace accident. I believe the truth to what happened to him will reveal much to us. Spend more time with Khan. Learn all there is to know, and then we shall deal with him appropriately." "Yes, my queen," Emil says as the spell fades. She adjusts her breasts in the mirror to show as much skin as possible. She's slept with numerous men for her master's gain, and killed twice as many. Emil is satisfied that should she have to do either, Khan is both charming and attractive. She reaches into her bag for a peppermint, her fingers tracing along the blade of an enchanted knife. Glowing markings on the weapon prevent it from being detected by any electronic scanning devices. How useful will you be, Antonio Khan? Jake leaves the school administrative office after having enrolled himself in the school year as a late transfer. He hoped that he could solve the mystery behind the appearances long before the school administrators can see through his falsified paperwork and learn his true identity. If everyone that has been abducted are teenagers, this school should be the perfect place to learn who is taking them to be experimented on. "And how are you going to figure that out?" Yumura asks, skeptical. Jake grins. "With my overwhelming charm and charisma, of course." He approaches a girl at her locker as she puts her books away after class. "Hey, what's up?" Jake asks. "I just started today. Name's Jake." The girl sizes him up. His hair is a little wild, and his clothes are kind of dirty, and not the most fashionable. She guesses he is on the grunge or punker side. "Amber," she finally replies. "Where did you come from, Jake?" "Middle of nowhere, Cornfield, Indiana. My parents needed a change of scenery. Said they were sick of the snow." Amber rolls her eyes, grabbing the book for her next class. "The South isn't at all it's hyped up to be. This place sucks just as much as any place else." Two other girls near them are speaking in whispers, and Jake strains to hear their conversation. "Deb and Cassie are both missing since Friday, and 2 boys from 10th grade are in the hospital after they said men dressed all in black tried to kidnap them. This town is going insane. I heard Cassie's dad works for Conco, and last week, before she disappeared, she told me she walked in on him crying in the bathroom. He was repeating 'I can't do it' over and over again." Jake flinches, hearing Conco, and being reminded of the disappearance of his own father, Ian Stewart. "Your father," Yumura says, "worked for this Conco, and also went missing, yes?" "Yeah," Jake replies. "Can we not talk about it? I'm not in the mood to deal with your cruel taunting, Yumura." "What are the chances that there is a Conco facility in 2 towns riddled with so many strange disappearances?" "Conco is a massive corporation. They likely have dozens of facilities scattered across the country." "See you around, Amber," Jake says, walking off. The girl just stares at him in confusion. What a strange guy, she thinks. Deep in thought, Jake bumps into Tiny Sterling and knocks him to the ground. The larger teen quickly scrambles to his feet and balls his fists, ready to fight. He stops as he sees Jake before him. Tiny can tell right away that Jake must be one hell of an athlete to be able to knock him down. He reaches over suddenly, squeezing Jake's arms. "Jesus!" Tiny whistles with amaze. "What the hell, man?" Jake shouts, pulling his arm back. Tiny is unable to maintain his grip whatsoever. "Personal space, bro!" "Are you carved out of fucking marble?" Tiny asks, impressed. "I thought someone ran into me with a book cart or something. But now I see that your body's just that fucking hard. Who are you? I've never seen you around before." "I just started today. My name's Jake." Tiny shakes his hand excitedly. "Just wait till the guys get a look at you. You're going to be our secret weapon this season. It's as if the football gods lowered you straight out of the heavens to us. Jake cringes. I'm not much of a football fan. Who fucking cares? Anyone that tries to tackle you will break their fucking arms. You won't need any skill with a body that hard. You have got to share your workout routine with us so that we can all get just as conditioned. Jake pictures the grueling training with Rodnovich at Scrim Hour that he endured over the summer, constantly being beaten to the verge of death and brought back by magic, just to be mercilessly beaten over and over again, causes him to tense. He can still feel the venom of dozens of snakes flowing through his veins. Just before his heart could stop, he feels the cold steel of numerous bladed weapons cleaving through his limbs and piercing his body, all to be repaired as if nothing happened. I'm not really sure your coach would approve of you going through what I did. My personal trainer did a lot of illegal shit. Guy was a psychopath for real, Jake says. Gotta admire his work at least. Tiny says, he created a fucking masterpiece. Tiny quickly becomes flustered. Not like in a gay way or anything. I am not coming on to you. I'm not like that at all. Jake laughs. I don't give a shit, man. It's pretty hard to offend me. But I definitely don't swing that way. Tiny clears his throat. Me neither. I'm just kind of fangirling out. I've never ran across someone my age that has the muscle tone of a pro. Our team hasn't had the best of luck in the past few years. With you, we could turn that all around and really command some respect around here. Jake mingles with the other students for most of the day, trying to gather any information he can about the area, Conco, and the rash of disappearances. Brian looks across the chow hall with disdain at Jake. The new guy seems to be hitting it off with the jocks pretty well. Lucy shrugs. He's kind of hot in a Kurt Cobain grunge kind of way. Looks dirty. Probably knows how to do a lot of dirty things to me. What the hell, Lucy? Brian shouts. Keep it in your pants, for God's sake. Anyways, he looks like he hasn't showered in a week. Look at how oily his hair is. Jealous of his popularity after one day? As if, Brian scoffs. I hate those guys. Like I would ever want to be friends with bullies and assholes. Jake catches Brian's gaze in the corner of his vision. Who's the guy giving us the stink eye? Tiny laughs. Oh, that's just Brian Rude. He's harmless. Dork is all talk. We keep him in line pretty well. Keep him in line? Jake asks, narrowing his eyes. We put him in his place, you know, Butch adds. Gotta keep the losers from thinking there are equals and all. What, do the losers have free reign where you're from? Jake grinds his teeth in anger. God damn it. I've gotten wrapped up here being all friendly to assholes just like Brad Henson and his lot. No wonder that Brian dude is glaring at us. If these jokers are half as bad as Brad Henson and his goons, I'd hate them just as much as him. They have a social pecking order, Yamura says. The strong cull the weak and maintain breeding dominance. He begins to laugh. You humans are no different from any other dirty animal. Shut it, Yamura. We aren't here for your observations on human behavior and culture. We're only at this school to get to the bottom of the disappearances. I am not the one who needs reminded of the mission. You seem to have enjoyed playing the popular boy for a time. Jake doesn't respond, still angry at himself. After school, Jake follows the girls who were talking beside Amber at the lockers, at a distance without them knowing. If Conco really has anything to do with the disappearances, the girl named Cherie lives the closest to their main office in town. If we want to observe them doing anything shady, we need to have a look at their offices. After a while, Jake is alerted by Yamura that they are being tailed. Jake breaks away from the girls. He's taking random alleys, trying to circle behind his pursuer without letting them know he's on to them. You look like you're lost, kid, a young man's voice says as he enters the alley from one adjacent. Jake eyes the newcomer suspiciously. You do not look dangerous, Yamura explains. You look like any other teenage human does. It is not an appearance that instills fear. It just doesn't sit well with me. Why was he following us and not the girls? Don't mean to be sexist or anything, but they'd make a much easier target. At this, Yamura pauses and thinks carefully on the situation. If he is aware of us and is sent to observe, would it not be in our benefit to discover who it is that he answers to? No, that's a terrible idea. We'd be playing right into the hands of whoever is behind this. Grinning, Yamura reveals his fangs. It is obvious that a face-to-face meeting with the person following them is exactly what he desires. Absolutely not. I am not putting us into a situation where you're going to try and take over and start killing people. Your senses are underdeveloped, but mine are not. I can smell the stench of my sister on this one. Inyana? Jake is taken by surprise. Has she gotten a host body too? Panic sets into the teen's voice at the thought of a monster even worse than Yamura, loose in the world. Of that, I am unable to determine. Perhaps this one is but an acolyte, still searching for a suitable vessel, much as you were selected by Yazatan Magics as mine. Then why would her vessel seek us out? To me, that just seems crazy. She would wish nothing more than to see my death upon her arrival. And what would be the biggest threat to that revival? It would be stupid to bring the only person that knows of her existence and doesn't want her released into the fray by alerting us of her presence to begin with. Yamura thinks for a moment on the point Jake has made and agrees that showing her hand this early would be a mistake. Inyana is far too intelligent to make such mistakes. He finally proposes an alternative answer. She has already been released, and that is the only way that she would allow herself to be known to them. If she has already taken human flesh, she knows there's no chance that she can be stopped. Your prolonged silence is too telling, the man sighs. I guess you figured out who sent me. Jake tenses, leaning back on his heels and balling his fists as he brings them up in preparation for any kind of attack. From the rooftops, several more figures streak down with such speed that they appear as little more than blurs. Shem, an acolyte of Inyana, attacks first. Stepping in with a right hook, Shem escalates the situation beyond control. Jake slaps Shem's lead leg at the shin with a kick and hammers his exposed kidney with an uppercut as he is moved off balance. One of the others moves in fast from Jake's left. Pivoting, Jake drives his back leg into the attacker's chest with a side kick. The blow knocks the man against the alley wall, where he slumps to his rear unconscious. For the first time, Jake can momentarily make out the features of his attacker. White and average height, dressed in all black BDUs. To him, they are obviously a team of some kind, likely related to the ones that he fought previously. Jake is disturbed by the man's eyes, yellow, with thin black slits, and he feels like he is staring into the eyes of a reptile. An open palm catches the teen across the face, drawing blood and staggering him enough to fall prey to a straight jab to the chest. Jake tries to counter with a punch of his own, but the second fighter tilts his head in evasion and traps the teen's extended arm. Short, deft punches to the wrist and shoulder. Kicking swiftly to Jake's chest, the teen feels his shoulder pop out of socket, and he shouts out in pain. Following up on his kick, the fighter releases Jake's arm and delivers a right hook to the cheek. Darkness begins to rise in Jake's mind, clouding his thoughts. His arm hangs limply to the side, and pain jolts through his body like a continuous electrical current. The dam separating the teen's consciousness from that of the Sakari general begins to fail. As the darkness and pain take over more and more of Jake, tiny fissures appear in the barrier, leaking out an inhuman presence. Black steam rises from Jake as a small portion of Yamura's aura begins to leak through. The energy now flowing through Jake is strange, but also in a way comforting. He finds that his pain is lessened, and even the fatigue of battling sleep subsides. In a moment, all of his stress and fear begins to melt, and all he can think of is rest, falling back into the darkness and allowing the beast that is sleeping within him to take over. Continuing to fight on instinct, Jake sidesteps a lunge from the second fighter and takes a shot to the ear from a third. coordinating as a unit, the team is unable to counter such skill and discipline, getting hit numerous times. With each delivered strike, the darkness consumes another piece of Jake, until all is swallowed. With a howl, like a feral animal, black energy explodes from the team and pushes the three opponents still on their feet back, signaling a transformation and the loss of control over his body. Jake's hair turns black and gains an oily sheen. Claws extend from his fingers, and his teeth lengthen into fangs. Jake's eyes disappear in a sea of red. Yamura darts forward, grabbing the nearest stunned fighter by the face and slamming his back against the alley wall. Splinters of brick fly outwards as the man's body is driven into the wall several inches. The third fighter attacks from behind, but Yamura is even faster and releases his hold on the other man, in time to turn and grab his attacker by the throat. Dropping his level and his weight backwards, Yamura drives the man's head through the wall and buries him to the shoulders in rubble. With a loud snap, the third fighter's body goes limp. Far less trained but more cunning, Shem holds his hands out in submission. "Whoa, whoa, whoa, you got us, big guy," he says. "Very impressive. We were warned not to take you lightly, but wow." Shem's left hand quickly reaches down to his belt, removing an electronic stun device. As soon as he raises the weapon and fires, Yamura is already moving towards him. Yamura dodges the taser's prongs and steps to Shem's side, grabbing him by both wrists. With tremendous pressure, the Sakari forces the man to his knees in paying compliance. Pain screams fill the alley as Shem's wrists are completely crushed. Sensing nothing, Yamura barely evades in time as a shadow darts down between them and slashes outward with long, curved claws. Instinctively, Yamura flattens his back against the wall as the attacker's claws scrape the ground and send up a shower of sparks. Not surprised at missing, the figure brings his claws directly back up and towards Yamura. Rolling, Yamura again evades being cut open, but receives a spray of splintered bricks in his face. Eyes stinging, Yamura kicks out hard and connects with a mass that does not give any. Stumbling, Yamura bumps into the wall and shouts out in pain as four dagger-like claws spear into the wall and pin him to the bricks. "Your reflexes are good," Rapture says, his eyes glowing in the darkness. Bright red flows down Yamura's arm as pain floods his senses. "I'd hoped fighting a demon would be a great challenge, since I've never seen one before now." Yamura fights against the white-hot agony that is his shoulder, and focuses his energy into the open palm of his free hand. A swirling, black ball of light manifests in Yamura's hand, but before he can utilize it, a thick tail wraps around his wrist and abruptly twists. A loud snap echoes through the alley as Yamura's bones break, and the black energy instantly disappears. Only the rarest, skilled fighters are good enough to manifest. I almost wished I had not defeated you with stealth. A true one-on-one battle would have been exhilarating. Yamura's thoughts begin to cloud, and pain pushes him towards blacking out. Summoning the last of his wits, he calls up the elemental symbols needed to focus fire, and pools his remaining energy for a last-ditch effort. "Agnestra!" Yamura coughs, sparkling the soft inner palate and fleshy tongue of the creature gripping him into combustion. Rapture howls in pain, thrashing and withdrawing its claws from Yamura's shoulder as his tongue melts surrounded by flame. Yamura drops to the street into a pool of blood collected below him and strains to push himself up with a crushed wrist and an impaled, dislocated shoulder. Taking the respite to reflect on his options, Yamura pushes all acknowledgement of the pain to a tiny back corner of his mind, ignoring it as much as possible as he makes a run out towards the street. Yamura drops into his path, blocking the entire alleyway with his massive body. With no Seal Acilair stored tattoos, and his escape blocked by the hulking form of the parasitically enhanced warrior, Yamura weighs his lack of options carefully. He knows that any attempt to push past the reptilian mutation will likely suffer him serious injuries. Injuries that he'll be unable to immediately mend. If the Sakari were to reverse his escape path and retreat the way he came, he would stand a higher chance of being spotted by police or bystanders. A concern of Jake's seeps its way into Yamura's thoughts, one that he would never think of on its own. We can't lead that monster into a populated area or into a fight with the police. He would slaughter anyone in his way. Yamura tries to shake the concerns from his head. The lives of humans do not matter to him. He cannot base his decisions on risk. He cannot risk his own survival on the avoiding of collateral damage. Good, Yamura growls. Perhaps while he is killing them, he will slow down enough for us to flee. You coward. I thought you were all proud and nothing scared you, Jake asks accusingly. The statement achieves its desired result, cutting into the Sakari's pride deeply. Black energy erupts around Yamura and becomes visible as he mixes the element of fire with his own life force. The black flames cast a strange glow across Rapture's dark scales. The mutated warrior grins, feeling the surge of his opponent's strength and the promise of a greater challenge. Forgive me if I get too carried away, Rapture says with a smile, licking his lips. The monstrous warrior's tongue is mysteriously regenerated, and smoke escapes his lips in thick clouds. It's been far too long since I've had a real challenge. If you desire a real challenge, then face me when I am able to utilize both of my arms, Yamura replies, still unable to move his left arm, which hangs down lifelessly and pale. Laughing, Rapture shakes his head. I'm supposed to bring you in alive, at full strength. You might be too difficult. Yamura senses a flicker of life in two of the downed fighters and thinks of an alternative strategy. Focusing on the visualization of the ancient symbols needed to perform Seal Asilaire, he tries to keep his opponent talking. Completing the technique, he tethers a phantom thread of his energy around each of the still living men that will allow him to absorb their life forces should they expire. As soon as his muscles tense to move, Rapture darts forward to intercept. Diverting just enough to evade Rapture, Yamura uses the nearest tethered fighter's neck as a springboard and vaults over the larger foe. Claws flash upward and rip through the Sakari's chest, raining blood down in a red shower. Yamura hits the pavement behind Rapture hard and rolls several times before coming to a rest on his face. That wasn't very smart, Rapture says, turning to face the motionless foe. The Sakari's body is surrounded by blood, but he has not yet transformed back into Jake, indicating that he is still both alive and conscious. Drawing on the single Seal Asilaire tattoo that is manifested on his back, Yamura focuses the energy on healing the severe damage done by Rapture's claws. Yamura sprints to his feet, wounds healed, and releases a burst of black fire into Rapture's face before making a run for the street. Surprised that his slash wasn't enough to put his opponent down, he quickly regains his composure and whips his massive tail around to connect with the fleeing Sakari's face. Yamura spun in the air several times before dropping to the ground hard. All the air is expelled from his lungs, and Yamura becomes blanketed by pain. Lifting his head becomes a burdensome chore, and a loud ringing echoes from ear to ear. Blood runs down Yamura's face from his nostrils and lips. The black begins to recede from his hair, and his eyes revert to normal. It seems I broke him, Rapture says, watching as Yamura collapses into full dormancy. He looks around, seeing that his help has all been decimated. Two of the fighters lie dead, another left unconscious. The man on loan from Mignana is barely functional with two crushed wrists. Sighing, he wraps Jake up in his tail and takes him to a van parked several blocks away. He piles the other bodies in around him and drives off, leaving the city completely, with Shim sitting beside him in tears and white-faced.